Welcome to Season 2. Ever since I learned where our stuff really comes from and how this system is trashing people and the planet, I've been trying to figure out how we can change it. I've read a lot of these. 100 ways to save the planet without leaving your house. 50 simple things you can do to save the Earth. The Little Green Book of Shopping. I thought these might have the answers, but their tips all start here, with buying better stuff. And they all end here, with recycling all that stuff when I'm done with it. But when it comes to making change, this story of going green, even though we see it everywhere, has some serious shortcomings. It says that if I become a smarter shopper and tell all my friends to do the same, I've done my part. And if I don't buy all this green stuff, then it's my fault the planet's being destroyed. Wait a minute, my fault? I didn't choose to put toxic products on the shelves or allow slave labor in factories around the world. I didn't choose to fill stores with electronics that can't be repaired and have to be thrown away. I didn't choose a world in which some people can afford to live green, leaving the rest of us to be irresponsible planet wreckers. Of course, when we do shop, we should buy the least toxic and most fair products we can. But it's not bad shoppers here who are the source of the problem. It's bad policies and bad business practices here. And that's why the solutions we really need are not for sale at the supermarket. If we actually want to change the world, we can't talk only about consumers voting with our dollars. Real change happens when citizens come together to demand rules that work. Look, it is important to try to live green. As Gandhi said, be the change. Living our values in small ways shows ourselves and others that we care. So it is a great place to start. But it is a terrible place to stop. After all, would we even know who Gandhi was if he just sewed his own clothes and then sat back waiting for the British to leave India? So how do we make big change? To answer that question, I went back and looked at Gandhi, the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, the US civil rights movement, and the environmental victories here in the 1970s. They didn't just nag people to perfect their day-to-day choices, they changed the rules of the game. It turns out there are 3 things you find whenever people get together and actually change the world. First, they share a big idea for how things could be better. Not just a little better for a few people, a whole lot better for everyone. And they don't just tinker around the edges. They go right to the heart of the problem, even when it means changing systems that don't want to be changed. And that can be scary. Hey, millions of us already share a big idea for how things can be better. Instead of this dinosaur economy that focuses only on corporate profits, we want a new economy that puts safe products, happy people, and a healthy planet first. Duh! Isn't that what an economy should be for? Trying to live eco-perfectly in today's system is like trying to swim upstream when the current is pushing us all the other way. But by changing what our economy prioritizes, we can change that current so that the right thing becomes the easiest thing to do. Second, the millions of ordinary people who made these extraordinary changes didn't try to do it alone. They didn't just say, I will be more responsible. They said, we will work together until the problem is solved. Today, it's easier than ever to work together. Can you imagine how hard it was to get a message across India in 1930? We can do it now in less than a second. Finally, these movements succeeded in creating change because they took their big idea and their commitment to work together, and then they took action. Did you know that when Martin Luther King Jr. organized his March on Washington, less than a quarter of Americans supported him? But that was enough to make change because those supporters took action. They did stuff. Today, 74% of Americans support tougher laws on toxic chemicals. 83% want clean energy laws. 85% think corporations should have less influence in government. We've got the big idea and the commitment. We just haven't turned it all into massive action yet. And this is our only missing piece. So let's do it. Making real change takes all kinds of citizens, not just protesters. When you realize what you're good at and what you like to do, plugging in doesn't seem so hard. Whatever you have to offer, a better future needs it. So ask yourself, what kind of change maker am I? We need investigators, communicators, builders, resistors, nurturers, and networkers. At storyofstuff.org, you can explore these types of change makers and find your first or your next step to take action. Being a responsible citizen starts with voting. That's one of those basic things that everyone's just got to do. But it gets way more exciting and fun when we put our unique skills and interests to work alongside thousands of others. I know that changing a whole economic system is a huge challenge. It's not easy to see a clear path from where we are today to where we need to go. And there's no 10 simple things we can do without leaving our couches. But the path didn't start out clear to all these guys either. Dr. King said, faith is taking the first step even though you don't see the whole staircase. So they worked hard to get organized, practiced the small acts that built their citizen muscles, and kept their focus on their big idea. And when the time was right, they were ready. It's time for us to get ready too. Ready to make change and write the next chapter in the story of stuff. This is a story about a world obsessed with stuff. It's a story about a system in crisis. We're trashing the planet, we're trashing each other, and we're not even having fun. The good thing is that when we start to understand the system, we start to see lots of places to step in and turn these problems into solutions. Problems with trying to use less stuff is that sometimes we feel like we really need it. What if you live in a city like, say, Cleveland, and you want a glass of water? Are you going to take your chances and get it from the city tap? Or should you reach for a bottle of water that comes from the pristine rainforest of Fiji? Well, Fiji brand water thought the answer to this question was obvious, so they built a whole ad campaign around it. It turned out to be one of the dumbest moves in advertising history. You see, the city of Cleveland didn't like being the butt of Fiji's jokes, so they did some tests, and guess what? These tests showed a glass of Fiji water is lower quality, it loses taste tests against Cleveland Tap, and costs thousands of times more. This story is typical of what happens when you test bottled water against tap water. Is it cleaner? Sometimes, sometimes not. In many ways, bottled water is less regulated than tap. Is it tastier? In taste tests across the country, people consistently choose tap over bottled water. These bottled water companies say they're just meeting consumer demand. But who would demand a less sustainable, less tasty, way more expensive product, especially one you can get for almost free in your kitchen? Bottled water costs about 2,000 times more than tap water. Can you imagine paying 2,000 times the price of anything else? How about a $10,000 sandwich? Yet people in the U.S. buy more than 500 million bottles of water every week. That is enough to circle the globe more than 5 times. How did this come to be? Well, it all goes back to how our materials economy works, and one of its key drivers, which is known as manufactured demand. If companies want to keep growing, they have to keep selling more and more stuff. In the 1970s, giant soft drink companies got worried as they saw their growth projections starting to level off. There's only so much soda a person can drink. Plus, it wouldn't be long before people began realizing that soda is not that healthy and turned back to, gasp, drinking tap water. Well, the companies found their next big idea in a silly designer product that most people laughed off as a passing yuppie fad. Water is free, people said back then. What will they sell us next? Air? So how do you get people to buy this fringe product? Simple. You manufacture demand. How do you do that? Well, imagine you're in charge of a bottled water company. Since people aren't lining up to trade their hard-earned money for your unnecessary product, you make them feel scared and insecure if they don't have it. And that's exactly what the bottled water industry did. One of their first marketing tactics was to scare people about tap water with ads like Fiji's Cleveland campaign. When we're done, one top water executive said, tap water will be relegated to showers and washing dishes. Next, you hide the reality of your product behind images of pure fantasy. Have you ever noticed how bottled water tries to seduce us with pictures of mountain streams and pristine nature? But guess where 1/3 of all bottled water in the U.S. actually comes from? The tap. Pepsi's Aquafina and Coke's Dasani are 2 of the many brands that are really filtered tap water. But the pristine nature lie goes much deeper. In a recent full-page ad, Nestle said, bottled water is the most environmentally responsible consumer product in the world. What? They are trashing the environment all along the product's life cycle. Exactly how is that environmentally responsible? The problems start here with extraction and production, where oil is used to make water bottles. Each year, making the plastic water bottles used in the US takes enough oil and energy to fuel 1 million cars. All that energy spent to make the bottle, even more to ship it around the planet, and then we drink it in about 2 minutes? That brings us to the big problem at the other end of the life cycle, disposal. What happens to all these bottles when we're done? 80% end up in landfills, where they will sit for thousands of years, or in incinerators, where they are burned, releasing toxic pollution. The rest gets collected for recycling. I was curious about where the plastic bottles that I put in the recycling bins go. I found out that shiploads were being sent to India, so I went there. I will never forget riding over a hill outside Madras, where I came face to face with a mountain of plastic bottles from California. Now, real recycling would turn these bottles back into bottles. But that wasn't what was happening here. Instead, these bottles were slated to be downcycled, which means turning them into lower quality products that would just be chucked later. The parts that couldn't be downcycled were thrown away there, shipped all the way to India just to be dumped in someone else's backyard. If bottled water companies want to use mountains on their labels, it would be more accurate to show one of these mountains of plastic waste. Scaring us, seducing us, and misleading us. These strategies are all core parts of manufacturing demand. Once they've manufactured all this demand, creating a new multi-billion-dollar market, they defend it by beating out the competition. But in this case, the competition is our basic human right to clean, safe drinking water. Pepsi's vice chairman publicly said, "The biggest enemy is tap water." They want us to think it's dirty and bottled water is the best alternative. In many places, public water is polluted thanks to polluting industries like the plastic bottle industry. And these bottled water guys are all too happy to offer their expensive solutions, which keep us hooked on their products. It is time we took back the tap. That starts with making a personal commitment to not buy or drink bottled water unless the water in your community is truly unhealthy. Yes, it takes a bit of foresight to grab a reusable bottle on the way out, but I think we can handle it. Then take the next step. Join a campaign that's working for real solutions, like demanding investment in clean tap water for all. In the US, tap water is underfunded by $24 billion, partly because people believe drinking water only comes from a bottle. Around the world, 1 billion people don't have access to clean water right now. Yet cities all over are spending millions of dollars to deal with all the plastic bottles we throw out. What if that money was spent improving our water systems, or better yet, preventing pollution to begin with? There are many more things we can do to solve this problem. Lobby your city officials to bring back drinking fountains. Work to ban the purchase of bottled water by your school, your organization, or entire city. This is a huge opportunity for millions of people to wake up and protect our wallets, our health, and the planet. The good news is it's already started. Bottled water sales have begun to drop while business is booming for safe, refillable water bottles. Yay! Restaurants are proudly serving tap, and people are choosing to pocket the hundreds or thousands of dollars they would otherwise be wasting on bottled water. Carrying bottled water is on its way to being as cool as smoking while pregnant. We know better now. The bottled water industry is getting worried because the jig is up. We are not buying into their manufactured demand anymore. We will choose our own demands, thank you very much, and we're demanding clean, safe water for all.
Luare în ochii lui Dumnezeu.